Welcome back. As conversations around an unjust criminal justice system garners more attention, more people have called for the closure of the heavily criticized Rikers Island Correction Facility. This has been an ongoing fight for many in our city since 2015. Joining me to discuss her efforts to close Rikers Island is Vice President of Policy and Strategy at Exodus Transitional Community, Kandra Clark. Kandra, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, can you talk a little bit about how the fight to close Rikers Island began? I mentioned that it was in 2015, but was it a little bit earlier than that? Can you talk a little bit more?
Yeah, actually, the fight to close Rikers has been going on for decades. I always pay homage to the Jails Action Coalition because, they've been a lot of leaders, for decades working on this. When Just Leadership USA was formed, they took over the Close Rikers campaign really at a local level. And then when they moved towards more of a national level, it became Freedom Agenda, which is a member led organization, mostly by directly impacted people who now work really locally to close Rikers Island. We have 120 organizations that have been signed on. And my organization specifically, we have 310 staff, 90% who are directly impacted. So it's really great to get all of our staff involved at so many different levels. And all of our staff and everyone really on the Close Rikers campaign has been affected in so many different ways. So they can really talk to the nuances of solitary confinement, of extended lengths of stay, of going back and forth to court. So all the different issues that we really talk about, they get to talk about their personal experience with it.
Now, I know that Rikers Island remains very, very controversial. Can you explain why the facility is viewed in such a negative light?
Yeah, I mean, last year 16 people died on Rikers. This year the number's 15. And just most recently, when you hear in the news about how these folks are dying, there's a lot of suicides, a lot of overdoses. But a lot of times you're seeing that the guards are watching people bleed out for 10 minutes and not doing anything. The most recent death that we just had was actually on the barge, which we call the boat, and a young man climbed over the fence and jumped off the top of the boat into the Hudson River. So when you think about the length and the process that took and how officers kind of just stood by, people are not treated with humanity and respect. And actually, there needs to be a new, staffing structure in general. We need to have staff that can address the root causes of incarceration, and that's not officers. They're not mental health professionals or credible messengers or social workers. And we really need to think through a new staffing structure that would allow people to get the help that they need so they're not committing crime and going back in and out of the system.
Now, I know for me, I learned a lot about this through the Khalif story, and his story gained national attention and educated so many people on the harsh realities of what happens at Rikers. For those who don't know, can you talk a little bit about that story and how it shined a light on the situation?
Yeah, so in 2010, Khalif was only 16 years old and he got arrested for a robbery that he didn't commit, that they had no evidence on. And he was held on Rikers with a $500 bail that unfortunately his family could not pay, and for 3 years. And for 2 out of those 3 years, he was in solitary confinement. There's extensive evidence that showed that he was abused by correctional officers, that he tried to commit suicide several times, and still, with the court processes being delayed and just the injustice within our quote unquote justice system, when he was finally released, and then in 2015 he committed suicide and ended his life because he could not get over everything that happened to him in there. And this is why we have been calling to end solitary confinement since then, even before then. And earlier this month, well, at the end of September, there was a hearing on ending solitary confinement. So we're very hopeful that it will be ended soon.
Now, can you talk about the population of Rikers Island and how that contributes to all of the issues facing the facility?
Yeah. So, when we talk about serious mental illness, and if you look on the comptroller's website, there's, several graphs that kind of discuss the population. And one of them is around the serious mental illness of folks. So 18% of the population has serious mental illness. Now, that's schizophrenia, bipolar, major depression. That's not that's not including the folks that have general mental health concerns, right? PTSD or anxiety. So when you look at that population, it's over 50% of the population on Rikers has some form of mental health, with 18% having serious mental health. And if you look at the women specifically, it's over 86% of the population of women that are on Rikers have mental health. So again, we really need to focus on the root causes of incarceration and addressing, helping people get the help that they need so that way they can live better lives for themselves, their families, and our whole society.
Now, I understand people in the facility are awaiting trials, but that could take a very long time. How long are these people staying at Rikers?
Yeah, and you say awaiting trial, they're just awaiting a court date.
Oh,
These are
wow.
folks that aren't even going to take it to trial. They're just trying to get to court.
Wow.
Right now, again, if you look at the comptroller's website, it's from 2021. The graph shows that the average length of stay is around 144 days. There's also recent data that gets pulled daily that the Vera Institute of Justice kind of coordinates with the Department of Corrections. So right now, the current length of stay for someone is 271 days. So again, people are not being produced to court. If they are being produced to court, they're not being seen. And that entire process is, it takes all day. I was incarcerated on Rikers for 4 months, so I've experienced this. You get woken up at 3 a.m. You finally get to the court appearance or the courthouse by, 9 or 10. And then sometimes by 5 o'clock, I'm leaving and I still haven't even got to see a judge. So that happens very regularly. And the court processes are just so slow that's why people end up languishing there for so long. And it's also why a lot of people end up pleading guilty and just taking a charge, even if they're not guilty, but it's just so they can get off the island, so they can get their apartment back, so they can get their kids back, so they can get their job back. I mean, we are really destroying families for very low level offenses.
Wow, thank you so much for clarifying that because I had no idea that was kind of what went into it. Now, I know this effort has received support from former Mayor Bill de Blasio, who aimed to have Rikers Island closed by 2027. However, our current mayor has expressed concern that it may be idealistic and that we should have a plan B. What are your thoughts on that?
So, I always say at the height of COVID, probably around May 2020, we had the population down to 3,800. So we almost had the population down to what we need for these borough-based plans to work. And we did that through very intensive decarceration efforts. And the city did not, the public safety was not impacted in any way by doing that. So I always say that the plan that we have had in place, which has been led by directly impacted people, that plan will still be able to get that number down right now. I think that we could actually get that number down today through decarceration efforts, through community investments, through therapeutic units that are tied to hospitals. When we think about our most seriously mentally ill or physically disabled folks that are on the island and are elderly, I mean, that could happen immediately. And also like ending city sentences. When we think about a city sentence, it's because someone committed a misdemeanor. Do they really need to spend 4, 6, or 8 months on Rikers? What if we put them in an alternative program and then they actually got the help that they needed, right? Like, let's think about it through a different lens. So I say absolutely, the mayor has so much information. We just drafted another report on how to reduce the women's population from 300 to 100, like tomorrow. So again, I think the city needs to really come together with people who are justice impacted and really follow through with the plan that we've had in place and learn from the history that we just had it down to 3,800 in 2020.
Now, Mayor Adams is also concerned that there just isn't enough space in borough-based jails to hold people who commit crimes. Would you say what you just mentioned, is that another alternative solution to dealing with somebody who may have committed a crime?
Absolutely. I mean, the therapeutic units that are tied to hospitals and nonprofits, there's one that's actually getting ready to be built now. And unfortunately, it's getting a lot of community pushback. And, again, we have to really stand bold and fight our communities back and say, hey, this is facts. When you have someone who is elderly, who has serious mental health, who maybe did commit a violent crime, but it's because he was in a psychotic break, they need help. by us putting them on Rikers, we're not helping our communities at all. In fact, we're making them more dangerous because they're more likely to experience more trauma on Rikers and then be more likely to come out and commit trauma to others. So hurt people, healed people, heal people. And that is a fact. So if we can start leading with love and really wrapping that support around folks, I think we would see it drastically change.
Now, I know a lot of people who may hear this, if they're not involved in this can be a little bit confusing or they just may not understand. There's also a stigma attached to anyone who has been, in the prison system and stuff like that. How can people learn more before they actually make a judgment or make a decision on whether they want to support or not?
Yeah. So, I think people need to also realize 1 in 3 children across the United States has an incarcerated parent, at least one, if not two. When you look at New York State alone, 1 in 10 New York City residents has a criminal record. 1 in 7 New York State residents has a criminal record. So we keep putting the stigma to folks that have it, but it's a third of our population, basically, right? When you think about it that way. And I always kind of use myself as an example. I have an extensive criminal history, and yet I've been able to come home and through having a community and people, a network that believed in me, I was able to turn my life around, right? And address the root causes of why I became incarcerated to begin with. So at the very basic level, I'm always trying to talk to people and let them know that I'm justice impacted, whether that's in my apartment building, whether that's on the train, no matter where it's at. We need to have communications and conversation with our family members and get them to see that we are all human beings. And again, that hurt people, and healed people, heal people. So I think it's also taking it very back, like back to the very basic. We need to have more conversations about it, be more open about it, and let people, identify us as humans. And that's why, another thing that Rikers needs to close, because they're so far away from everything, right? They're on this island that no one can get to. And I think that's why society in general just considers them not human, right? Because they don't have to see it. So the borough-based facilities will really allow the communities to play more of a key role in rehabilitation and ending recidivism.
Now, how can people learn more about this?
Yeah. So you can go to closerikers.org. There's a website there. You can learn as much as you want there. Just Leadership USA has the hashtag Just Us campaign. And I'm so excited because, with the Just Us campaign, they're really working at a national level to A, humanize folks that are incarcerated, but B, think about emergency preparedness and planning for evacuations. I mean, we think about all the hurricanes that have happened, all the natural disasters. There's never an evacuation plan for people who are incarcerated. They have evacuation plans for animals, but they don't have it for human beings who are mothers, brothers, sisters, daughters inside. So definitely check out the hashtag Just Us campaign, hashtag Close Rikers campaign. And you can also go to Exodus's website, www.etcny.org, and get more information about it through there as well. So again, we work really at
I'm
using
so
collective
sorry.
leadership
We're at
across
the end
the
of our show.
coalitions.
Thank you so much. We're at the end of the show, but please, everyone, check those links out. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
That's all for our show today. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you in your safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.